Experience CBS and KDKA News, coverage you trust every day.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the next 50 years. You know, our hometowns are at a turning point. New stadiums are under construction. Expansion of our convention center is about to begin.
Yet there are still many people looking for jobs that can help them support a family. And conversely, there are businesses looking for people who can do the job. Please join us in welcoming our moderator from CBS Evening News, Dan Rather.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for that typically warm Pittsburgh, southwestern Pennsylvania welcome. It's a pleasure to be here, honored to be with you. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Ken and Patrice. You know, cities all across the country are grappling with many of the same issues that you're confronting here in southwestern Pennsylvania. You are not alone. Everybody, in one way or the other, has a version of these questions. How can a region promote the creation of new companies and new jobs? Not just the city, but how can the whole region do that? How will employers find the workers to fill those jobs when the jobs are created? What will it take to succeed in the next 50 years? We live in one of the most extraordinary times of economic growth in American history. Southwestern Pennsylvania is home to some of the best universities and colleges anywhere in the world. But face the fact we must, the region as a whole has lagged behind the nation as a whole in business starts and in job growth. KDKA TV Money Editor Bill Flanagan is here to introduce our first turning point. Bill?
Yes, Dan, and we call this first turning point our slow startup. And on point, members of our panel for this first discussion are Paul Cristiano, the provost of Carnegie Mellon University, Sean McDonald, founder of Automated Healthcare, as well as the chairman of the Pittsburgh Technology Council, Bill Strickland, our host for today and founder of the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild, Robert Sansom, one of the four founders of Four Systems, and Jeffrey Romoff, the president and CEO of UPMC. Welcome. Thank you all for participating. Dan, take it away.
What I hear fairly regularly is, listen, there's a lot of brain power in this part of the state. Yes, there's a lot of capital, but it tends just to move around among itself, and you don't attract from the outside the capital and, yes, the brain power you need. What do you think, Bill? Is that true?
It has been true. I think it's changing. But I really think it's about marketing. We've got to feel as if we are world-class, deserve to be there, so that it becomes, in a sense, a self-fulfilling legacy, that you define yourself as part of the solution and not part of the problem. I think the integration of leadership in this community to begin to see ourselves as a world-class city, that process is beginning, and I think that that will go a long way toward getting the visibility that the community deserves and creating a legacy of where this kind of thing will continue to happen.
And Robert Sampson, you and your company brought a lot of jobs into the area.
That's right.
You brought capital and you brought brain power. Why here? That may be helpful to us in figuring out how to get other people to come.
I think Four Systems, which we started almost 10 years ago, has been an exception in that we've made a conscious decision to stay here in Pittsburgh, where all of the forces would say we should go to Silicon Valley or Route 128 in the Massachusetts area. Despite our conscious decision, we have succeeded in Pittsburgh. I'd like to address the point that was made by the audience just now, and I think, with all due respect to the mayor, I think that Nordstrom's is not going to attract the young people to Pittsburgh. We need to figure out something that will attract and make Pittsburgh a destination for young people, whether it's rock climbing on Mount Washington or a Disney virtual reality site. I don't know what it is, but we have to start thinking along those lines as well.
Let me take a little bit of a contrary view. I think the rap on Pittsburgh that it's having difficulty attracting professionals and young people and the next generation of innovative thinkers was probably more true 10 years ago than it is now. I know at the UPMC Health System, at the School of Medicine of the University of Pittsburgh, we are constantly and easily recruiting what you would call stars in the pharmaceutical and biotechnology and the medical area to this town. And why? It's got a lot of nice things in this town. It is very livable. The cost of living is manageable. It has lagged behind the peaks and valleys of other big cities, but has remained relatively level and manageable.
If everything that Jeffrey Romoff says about Pittsburgh is true, why has it been such a struggle?
I think Robert demonstrated just what our biggest problem is. Every time somebody steps forth with a new idea, there are 100 people giving you a reason why you shouldn't do it. Robert, we can have Nordstrom's and rock climbing on Mount Washington. We don't need to make that decision that one is bad and the other is good. We can have it all if we share a common vision, and that's the challenge. But I think we've let the negative people in Western Pennsylvania define the agenda for too long. And I think what you're hearing is finally there's a group of people stepping forward and saying, we're going to define a different kind of agenda rather than always shooting ourselves in the foot. So let's do both. I'll challenge you to a climb on Mount Washington, okay, Robert?
Ken, let's turn to some people here in the audience for a response to that. Oh, rather than dance around some of this, we're trying very hard to come to the heart of it. If you had to pick one thing that you think would attract more of the kind of people who would create jobs, bring new brain power and capital to Pennsylvania, what would it be?
It would be the opportunity for all to see that Pittsburgh is a place that you can grow and develop to your fullest potential, that everyone is included in the social, in the economic, and the spiritual development of the town across the board, that this is the place to be for everyone, young and old, rich and poor.
Ken, do you have somebody there we could talk to on this same point about, besides the weather, what about the cultural climate of Western Pennsylvania?
Good question. Ava DeMarco founded a company in her basement in Mount Lebanon a few years ago called Little Earth Productions. You make recycled, fashionable products. You're kind of an old-time business, but you're part of the new Pittsburgh.
Yes, we've been here for 7 years, and we're a designer, but we also do manufacturing. We're located in the Hill District, which is traditionally a distressed part of Pittsburgh. But in the 7 years that we have run this company, I've noticed a big change, and I'm actually involved in an organization called the Pittsburgh Hot Team that's working together with the Regional Alliance and all the other groups in Pittsburgh that are trying to get things going here. And I'm really pretty optimistic about it. I think a lot of people have been complaining, but I think, like the mayor just said, that we can have it all, and I see more and more people, just the fact that people are aware of the potential that we have here and what can be done here in, in industry and technology with education, that I think we're more than starting to turn the corner. We're getting along the way. And I think it is a matter, again, to get back to what the mayor is saying, though, don't start like people put ideas out and then everybody shoots them down. Let's just start doing things. And if we do 100 things and 30 of them work out, that's a lot better than us doing studies after studies and then doing 3 things and not, 2 of them only work out.
Very good point, Ken. Very quickly, we'll get back to Bill in a moment, but Sean McDonald, give me one thing more than any others likely to attract the kind of entrepreneurial talent that you brought to Pittsburgh.
I think it's really driven by opportunities. I mean, it's normal, to respond to another speaker, I think it's normal for young people to move, to be very flexible about where they live. We're going to lose people out of the region. We need to attract people to the region at the same time, and I think there'll be a net positive if we can do that effectively. But where I think people come, where young people are looking for is exciting, interesting work. And if we can get that entrepreneurial startup momentum that I believe we're beginning to see in this region, I think the young people issue, as it's being defined here, will take care of itself. People will come here if there's the opportunity, and they'll find interesting work and find fulfilling job prospects here. It's a wonderful place to live, and I think we'll be able to, that problem will fix itself.
That gives us momentum into our next turning point.
Right, absolutely, Dan, and we'll be back with our next turning point in just a moment. We're calling this one, Where Are the Workers?
The next 50 years on KDKA TV is brought to you by McDonald's. Hurry into McDonald's and try the new Big Extra Sandwich made hot, fresh, and just for you. Did somebody say McDonald's? And by the West Penn Allegheny Health System.
Some of the names that wrote the history of Pittsburgh medicine have come together to to rewrite its future. So you'll still have a great choice for great health care. Introducing the new West Penn Allegheny Health System. World-class health care in your hometown.
At McDonald's, we put a little extra zest into seasoning the burger. We go the extra mile with thick sliced tomato and fresh whole leaf lettuce. We take extra care chopping the fresh onions. We even put some extra thought into where to put the ketchup and mayo. Why? Because it takes a lot of little extras to make a big extra. Presenting the extraordinarily tasty Big Extra. Where? Did somebody say McDonald's?
Old Mountaineer, new Mountaineer. Benson Lincoln Mercury has it. With all-wheel drive, V8 engine, moonroof, and leather interior under $34,000. And you get more. Benson's award-winning team service. We assign a specialized service team to maintain your vehicle as long as you own it. Only at Benson Lincoln Mercury. Route 51 South, just 2 miles north of Century 3 Mall. Get the Mountaineer leather package at no extra charge now at Benson Lincoln Mercury.
Now we turn to the issue of the workforce. The search for skilled workers isn't confined to Pittsburgh. Employers nationwide are scrambling to address the problem. And metropolitan Pittsburgh, we're not just talking about the city, the whole metropolitan area has to contend with an added issue, a population with an increasingly older demographic.
Thank you, Dan. And we call this turning point, Where Are the Workers? And on point to talk about it this time out, Dave Nelson, an entrepreneur, the co-founder of Co-Manage, a local startup. Helen Faison, the superintendent of the Pittsburgh City Schools. Charles Gregory, the president of Sony Electronics and Manufacturing. And finally, on the end of the panel, Rich Stanizzo, the business manager for the Pittsburgh Building Trades. Dan? Rick.
Thank you. Dave Nelson, very successful entrepreneur. What does Pittsburgh have going for it at the moment?
I actually believe that Pittsburgh is now one of the best places in the entire country to start a business, a high-tech business.
And that's going to surprise a lot of people.
It's a surprise, but specifically it's because the resources haven't been exploited here. We have some of the best colleges and universities in the entire country. We have lots of people in corporate America who are potential candidates to make the transition to a high technology company. And interestingly, our experience in raising venture capital this last round that our company went through, we dealt with East Coast and West Coast firms, and exactly the opposite of Four Systems' experience 6 years ago. They looked at us and said, being in Pittsburgh is a competitive advantage for you to attract workers.
If that's the case, since that's the case, not if, since that's the case, why isn't Pittsburgh like Seattle, Silicon Valley, Austin, some of these other places that are booming right now?
I think the answer is relatively simple. We came later to this process than some of these other cities. And frankly, I think a lot of the people in this region still look backwards and are living with what happened in the 80s and 90s. If they could press the reset button and really look at where are we today, there's a large number of startups, companies like Co-Manage and Free Markets Online and Neolinear, Mediasite.net, and the like. There's a whole wave that's following Four Systems, which actually set the example, showed it could be done, showed you could take people and technology out of a place like CMU and make it happen.
Now, Helen Faison, with the schools, let me tell you what somebody told me today just before I came over here. They said, listen, Pittsburgh has traditionally had one of the best urban school districts in the United States of America, but it's not turning out the kinds of workers that the high-tech industries now need, and, said this person, I put it in quotation marks, one of the problems is the teachers' union. Can we get that on the table and talk about it?
I don't believe the teachers' union is responsible for whatever is true of Pittsburgh these days. I think that, like many others who live in this region, we remember when any person graduating from high school could find a place to work and earn a good living. We perhaps have been a bit slow in recognizing the changes that have occurred, and that's one of our greatest challenges now, is to prepare students who will be ready for the new world of work into which they will be moving. And alongside that is the need to prepare our teachers to teach those skills that are now needed.
True or untrue, that there's a disconnect between what the schools are turning out and what the high-tech industry needs?
I think that has been true. I think we've continued to prepare young people very well for college experiences, but we recognize and must recognize that not all of our students who are capable will want to go to college or should need to go to college, and that we need to prepare all of our students for the kind of world they're living in.
Gregory, you hire people all the time. Where's the biggest disconnect between the schools and what you need?
Well, I would just agree with that statement. Sony Electronics, and if I may add, is an example of what Pittsburgh can do to attract a world-renowned company. Pittsburgh did it 10 years ago, and if you look at what's happened with Sony over the last 10 years, we've gone from 200 employees 10 years ago to 4,000 today, and we're still growing. And it's been the quality of the people, number one, the location. And now, as things get tighter, we need to find more, we need a better partnership with the schools to prepare people for what I'll call technical jobs that maybe aren't degreed engineering jobs, 2-year degree, technician level work. There is some disconnect. Now, some of the schools are doing a better job than others, but I think this is one area that we must do better on as we develop workers as they come out of high school to be ready for those other jobs that can be very important, well-paying jobs that allow people to be successful.
Let's bring in Rich on this. From the union standpoint, let me tell you something someone said to me, again, a different person before I came on. He said, look, the unions are doing a pretty good job of trying to retrain people, but they're not doing nearly a good enough job of trying to bring in minorities and people at what I would call, what this person called at the low end of the economic scale. Is that a fair accusation?
No, I don't believe it's a fair accusation. Let me tell you this. I mean, we have 2,000 minority members that live in this county out of 11,000. I would put those numbers up against any employer. But going a little further, are we having problem recruiting not only minorities, but kids out of high school? Yeah, we are. We're having a hard time getting
Why are you
people
having
to
a
pass
problem
the test.
recruiting?
Well, I think the disconnect. I agree with what Helen's saying, but understand that my perception of the problem is what do we as a society expect out of our school system? And I think that school system is numbers. How many kids do we send to college? I mean, we set up a whole educational system geared to satisfy 20% of the population. Because if you look at the statistics in the state of Pennsylvania, probably only 20% of the people that start or go to high school finish college. But that's all you hear about in the school system, and I think that that's where our big problem is. We have to make people understand that there are other alternatives than going to college.
Well, now, what about that, Mr. Nelson? True or untrue, that if you want a well-paying job in high-tech future industries, you nearly have to have a college education?
I think there's a lot of truth to that. Of course, high-tech companies employ people with a wide range of skills. A software development company, you need a college degree. One of the great things about this region is we're actually a net exporter of such people. This region produces more of those people than it consumes, and so that's back to one of the advantages that a high-tech company has in this area. You can hire kids straight out of CMU or Pitt or any of the other 25 colleges and universities in this region.
Patrice, do you have someone in the audience who wants to address this point?
Yes, we do, Dan. Russell Lanza is with me, and he's the president of Lanza Incorporated. They supply medical equipment. They put medical equipment basically in the home, but we were talking earlier about employing and recruiting. And Mr. Lanza, your comment?
Well, we're not like Sony, but we did go from 1 person to 100. which may not compare, but we have a constant problem with bringing enough people in. As a matter of fact, we constantly have openings which could be filled by either people from high school or people from college, and we have them from high school to master's degrees. And we recently recruited a manager in our company from California. So people talk about everybody wanting to go from Pittsburgh to California. We brought this one from California to Pittsburgh. And I think Pittsburgh's the best kept secret in the world. If I were looking at a place, I think it's an ideal place to live. We have the friendliest people in the world. It's one of the places that you enjoy being in. You walk into Pittsburgh and you can feel like you're at home.
Patrice, let me, if I may, call on the hometown advantage here for a moment.
Sure, Dan.
No, you know this community very, very well. when you hear complaints, we've heard a lot of compliments about Pittsburgh, and I think I'm here to say I believe all of them. But when you hear people complaining on this business of the workforce, what's the most common complaint you hear?
Actually, I hear a lot about accessibility to jobs. We know that right now Pittsburgh is undergoing, if you will, another type of renaissance with the building of stadiums, expansion of our convention center, hopefully just the changes economically, even in downtown. And a lot of people are saying those jobs they're opening up jobs, but how can people actually get to them? If I live in the East End and I don't have a car and I don't have the opportunity to get to that job, what can be done for me? Can you address that?
I would just like to comment on that also. For our operation, Sony operates a very large facility 50 miles east of the city. There's no public transportation. So we have jobs that go unfilled because we've attracted people from the local area where people have cars, but we would like to expand, come into the city, looking at diversity in the workforce. But we need to partner with organizations to improve the infrastructure for transportation so that we can draw a wider path in attracting people from all around, including closer into the Pittsburgh area. So that's another area of concern of mine that we have to really concentrate on.
Liaison, let me broaden out. You lived in the community a long time, a lot of experience. My impression, correct me if I'm wrong, is that Pittsburgh, certainly not as well as some other major urban areas, has a lot of highways and some pretty good roads, but they're not always connected to get people around the region as well. Am I wrong about that?
We don't have a big problem with the school district because we're in a rather compact area, but I think that many of the young people growing up in our schools do tend to think that they can't go beyond the borders of the city, and I think that is a real concern on our part. And I was glad to hear someone mention partnerships, because if we are going to prepare young people appropriately in the district, we're going to have to rely upon partnerships with all of the persons who contribute to the well-being of this community. And I think we're beginning to do that, and particularly as we address the needs of preparing our young people for careers after high school. And that has to begin at the kindergarten. We cannot wait until they're in high school to do that.
Patrice?
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dr. Faison. Howard Slatter's with me today. He is with Fannie Mae, and you know, of course, that they house people all over the world, all over America at least. And you had a comment, question?
One of the things that Fannie Mae believes is important about this region and an attractability factor is its affordable housing. Pittsburgh is very affordable as it relates to housing in the metropolitan statistical area. And we know that attracting people to this region, we have to have adequate and affordable housing, and that is one of the most affordable and attractive things about this region, that we do have housing that can house all of the individuals that you heard about today that are being hired by these individuals. So we think that is a great asset for this region.
Mr. Nelson, would you want to follow up on that, please?
I would echo that in a second. Why, we look at this high-tech company that we're building. We've hired 1/3 of our people from outside the area. We've had people move to Pittsburgh from Seattle, Silicon Valley, Boston, Vancouver, Kazakhstan, you name it, they're coming here. Why are they coming here? High-tech jobs and the quality of life. The quality of life is that low-cost housing, it's great sports and culture, it's almost no traffic on the highways compared to New York or Silicon Valley or what have you. It's great mountain biking. It's all of those things that make up the non-work part of your life. So if you've got the jobs, if you've got the high-tech jobs, and that's what I see happening in Pittsburgh now, people will actually come here for the rest of what we've got.
Well, next up, Plan B and opportunity for all.
Some of the names that wrote the history of Pittsburgh medicine have come together to rewrite its future. So you'll still have a great choice for great health care. Introducing the new West Penn Allegheny Health System. World-class health care in your hometown.
We represent two organizations that promote community, the Pittsburgh Pirates and United Way.
When you give to the United Way, your investment comes back to you many times over.
Whether it's getting help to people when a disaster affects the entire community or an individual, the agencies of the United Way are there to help you.
You're living proof that with all of us working together, we can build a stronger community, the United Way.
Are we there yet?
Every day, we're getting closer. We're offering more services, connecting more people, going more places. We're the Port Authority, and we're one of the reasons this region keeps moving.
Welcome back to the next 50 years, a turning point for our hometown.
Now we turn to Plan B and beyond. Once again, here's Money Editor Bill Flanagan.
Thank you, Stacy and Jen. Like it or not, and I know that many people around here don't especially like it, we are building stadiums and a convention center and now a major downtown retail entertainment district, all to promote development of the region. It's Plan B and beyond, largely financed by taxpayer dollars. We call this turning point Opportunity for All. And on point for this discussion, Art Rooney, the Executive Vice President of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Carol Brown, President of the Pittsburgh Cultural Trust, Tom Murphy, the Mayor of Pittsburgh, and Esther Bush, the President of the Urban League of Pittsburgh. Dan?
Thanks. Mayor, how do you ensure that the benefits of the inner city development benefit the region as a whole?
Let me say first, Dan, that I would prefer that there be no public money in any of these developments, but I believed that in lieu of the confidence of the private market to make the developments, the public needed to share some of the risk. We needed to get this region moving again. We took big risk, and it's working. And what the challenge is that we all had first was to create the jobs, and now to figure out how everybody can enjoy those opportunities. We've developed great partnerships with the labor unions. You know, you remember a few years ago, Pittsburgh was known as the strike capital of the world. We've had a major strike in this city for a long time now because we're working well with the unions. With the African-American community in this city, we've built great partnerships with Esther Bush and many other organizations to bring together the kind of pieces that historically weren't together to make this city work. So first was creating the jobs, and second, we're bringing the right people together who had ideas about solutions to get people involved in those opportunities.
Rooney, your family, you and your family are legends around the country for pouring yourself into bettering Pittsburgh. But for the welder or the welder's helper who does not live in the city, help them understand how what's happening in rebuilding the city is going to benefit them, people who do not live in this city.
Well, I think the big thing we're doing with the stadium projects, the convention center, the airport, is that we're making a statement to the country and to the world that we can do these kinds of projects, that the public and private sector can come together and do it, that organized labor can be part of it, that the minority and women communities will be part of it, all of which we're doing in these projects now. And as we make that kind of statement to the country, we invite them to come here and do their projects here, and you know, hopefully these are the kinds of statements we need to make to turn that image of Pittsburgh around nationally.
Is it still a problem, the image of the city as steel town, strike town?
Well, I think it's changing, but
Rust Belt.
I think we need to do more to change the image, but I think those of us who are here know that the community is changing. We know what a great place it is to live and work, and now it's a question of getting that message out to the rest of the country.
Ms. Brown, how do you answer those who say, look, I like the arts as much as the next person, but Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania have so many needs for schools, for development of jobs, that this is not a time to be centering on the arts. Certainly we can be interested.
Well, I think there's no question that the arts are a significant factor in economic development for our region as a whole, and have been traditionally. There's no question that the arts not only take Pittsburgh's name, if we talk about changing our reputation nationally and internationally, the arts, the Warhol Museum, the Pittsburgh Symphony, our great internationally known institutions take our name around the world and say that we're a city of quality. We're a region of quality, that we're a great place to relocate a business, to bring new employees into. but we also contribute tremendously to the economic vitality of the region.
In what way?
Just recently, my organization is involved in developing a cultural district in downtown Pittsburgh, a highly successful cultural district. We're opening our 5th theater, and we've been a major force in economic development. We've seen an investment over the last 15 years of about $500 million, $500 million in our cultural district, with 1/7 coming from the public sector, but matched 6.5 times over by private sector development, and that has created multiple jobs. Arts institutions do not only employ people like myself, white-collar workers, but we employ stagehands and operating engineers. We work with minority communities on the construction jobs that we do. We work with our unions. We're major employers in our region.
Mr. Bush, the name of this segment is Opportunities for All. As we stand here today, we know there are not equal opportunities for all people in Pittsburgh. What's the single biggest improvement that needs to be made, not just for the city, but for the whole region in this regard?
I think the inclusion of African Americans at the policy-making levels. We have enjoyed great partnerships throughout the city and with corporate America. And I'm very pleased that with a lot of the economic development opportunities that are out there with the stadiums and with the expansion of the convention center, there's actually people that are working to make sure the African American community is included. But while we continue to do that, we need to make sure that wherever a policy is being made, that African Americans, plural, are at the table in order to share in the initial discussion about how we're going to move our county and our city forward. And so inclusion across the board from the top down, not from the bottom up.
Bruno, you've had so much experience with this kind of thing, and I know in your own operation that you have a good reputation for this. But when you talk to other business leaders, do you find they have a deaf ear, a semi-deaf ear, or really want to listen to this kind of talk?
I think people in this community understand what's happened in the past and that we have to change the way we've done things in the past, and I think that's happening. I think that the word partnership has been used here a lot of times today, and that's what's happening. The minority community, organized labor, the public and private sectors are all coming together in helping make these various projects happen, and the more we can do that, the more we demonstrate how that works, the more successful we'll be.
It occurs to me we've talked about what needs to be done in terms of education, preparing people better for the jobs. We've talked about what an important contribution the arts make. But what about transportation, Mayor? If we're going to have in this whole region opportunity for all, what's the biggest need in terms of public transportation?
It's the mass transit issues. It is the ability to move people around the region better, and I think it's primarily mass transit. It is also how we connect the job creations at Sony. Sony is 50 miles away from Pittsburgh, but there's no reason why Pittsburghers can't get there, and we can't arrange the transportation they need to get there. Dan, I think what you're walking in the middle of, and I hope you're getting the feeling of it, is this city is in the midst of enormous transformation, not only physically, but how we think about ourselves. And the battles over the stadium and the convention center, I believe, were the watershed because they really were a measure of our will to do something or to sort of sit back and lose what were two very, very valuable assets, the two major league teams that we had here. And this community, thank goodness, said, we're going to go forward here. And what the results are is that now you're beginning to see bubbling out of that all kind of exciting opportunities.
Let's go to the audience.
I'm not sure, I may be taking a wild guess here, but this gentleman and I were just speaking just a moment ago, and your name again is?
David Richardson.
And David, you were telling me, though, this speaks to your point, Dan, that you have a list of minority candidates.
That's correct. I'm with First Fridays, and we are a socializing and networking group here in the city of Pittsburgh. First of all, I'd like to say city of Pittsburgh is very well known as a city of champions, and I do agree with that. I welcome the new developments of partnership and linkage. However, a number of my constituents on many different days or dialogues are saying that this is not the most livable city for African Americans. What we've done, the First Fridays group has created something called the Regional Inclusion Project, which is a strategy to create linkages between professional African Americans here in the city of Pittsburgh, as well as businesses in different investment sectors. So we'd like to open that up to folks in the city of Pittsburgh to say that this is a direct way to meet some of the talented African American professionals that we have that are in our group.
Well, I think the question, maybe Dan and maybe our panelists can go back to this, is why isn't that working if the people are there?
Let's turn, Bernie, why doesn't it work if it doesn't?
Well, I agree, and I've heard many people say in the African American community in particular that you know, we are losing, particularly at the professional level, African American workers, and why is that happening? I think quite simply it's been that we haven't had the opportunities for those kind of people as compared to other cities around the country. And that's one of the things that we have to work on as we make this transition, is that, you know, that sector of the population be included in this next round of expansion in our economy.
Mayor, what do you do, personally and directly, what do you do to attack this problem?
The problem of access.
Right.
I've played an important role in bringing the right people together. We have a landmark agreement with the labor unions. 24 crafts, for the first time ever in their history, opened their doors all together. It used to be that one opened their door for 2 weeks here and 2 weeks there. Had booths in the City County building downtown. Several thousand people had an opportunity to apply for apprentice programs in that. We have provided funding to a whole variety of groups across Pittsburgh to provide pre-apprentice training, to prepare people who want to be carpenters or electricians to get the necessary skills to become the apprentice. So it's building those doors. My job is to bring the pieces together, people that have great ideas but need a partner, and often have misconceptions about their partners, and understand how you put that together to move forward. And
We'll
that's
go to
what we're
Stacey in
doing.
the audience just a moment. Ms. Bush, he talks the talk, but does he walk that walk?
We still need more to be done, because where the African American community is in the city of Pittsburgh compared to the 50 other cities of our size, we are near the bottom. And so I applaud, and definitely there are measurable steps that have been taken over the last several years, but we have so much further to go. And so we need everybody working on inclusion being a part of what they do every day without giving it a second thought. Inclusion needs to be a part of what Pittsburgh is about in terms of developing all of our human capital.
Well, Mayor, you say amen to that.
I do say amen to it, and I think I love impatience. I'm an impatient person. The issue was, until a few years ago, Dan, we didn't have any jobs. Right. For African Americans or white people, there simply weren't jobs being created here. I love this discussion now, because we have the opportunities being created.
Stacey?
Dan, there also could be some sort of a disconnect. You may not know Mr. George DeBolt, but George DeBolt is well known in this community. He is also probably single-handedly the man who got Prince Charles to come and visit Pittsburgh 11 years ago. And
we won't hold that against him.
No, absolutely not. But it's a very interesting point that George wants to make about what was talked about then and what is happening now.
Thank you, Stacey. I think we're overlooking the point that there are really two counties in Allegheny County. There's the western part of the county and the northern part of the county that are doing very well. Unemployment's low, they're developing, there's a boom going on, and now downtown Pittsburgh is getting their opportunity. But it seems to me that the communities where the need is the greatest are not getting the link, not getting the partnerships. You know, Sony's 50 miles away instead of being in Homewood or McKeesport. You know, the attention isn't being focused, especially the public dollars aren't being directed to where they're needed the most. And you know, I agree with everything they say, but the partnerships aren't happening, the links aren't being made, and people aren't walking the walk.
I hope you don't mind my having a little laugh. As you know, I have shaken the Prince's hand. I have great respect for him, and the fact you brought him in the community is, in fact, a great feather in Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania's hat. And I didn't want to leave any misconception about that.
And one point, like for example, the plan that the Prince and the architects came up with in 1988 took 11 years to finally take hold in Homestead. You know, that should be unacceptable, and people should recognize that that's not good enough.
Got your point. Bill?
Thanks a lot, Dan. And that sets us up very well for our final segment, where we'll think more globally, or at least regionally, and talk about the solutions for a city and a region. We'll be right back with more of the next 50 years in a moment.
Some of the names that wrote the history of Pittsburgh medicine have come together to rewrite its future. So you'll still have a great choice for great health care. Introducing the new West Penn Allegheny Health System. World-class health care in your hometown.
What's the strength of a dollar? Money is economic energy. When distributed, it has the power to fuel all manner of enterprise. Since 1855, Dollar Bank has invested billions of dollars in millions of lives and thousands of businesses in Western Pennsylvania, creating a currency of growth and opportunity. That's the strength of a dollar.
Here's an idea. Make car buying easy. There's a place that's easy to deal with and easy to get to. It's South Hills Chrysler Plymouth Jeep. Look how easy they make it. 0.9% financing for 60 months on every new car in stock. They make owning a car easy. Easy people, easy 5-star service, and easy to find at South Hills Chrysler Plymouth Jeep, Route 19, Peters Township. We make car buying easy.
Southwestern Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh have plenty of potential. And as we've heard all through this evening, many important decisions still need to be made. Foremost, it seems, is the need for the city and the region to work together, not separately, to bring Pittsburgh and the whole area into the 21st century. Bill?
And we call this turning point, Dan, Solutions for a City and a Region. And on point to talk about it this time for this segment is Tim Parks, the president of the Pittsburgh Regional Alliance, Teresa Hines, Pittsburgh philanthropist. Bill Strickland, our host for the afternoon, for the event, is back with us. Jim Rohr is the president of PNC Bank, and Jim Scahill is the Armstrong County Commissioner, as well as the co-chairman of the Working Together Consortium. Welcome to all of you. And Jim Rohr, why don't I start with you? PNC Bank, a big regional institution. Your interests obviously extend far beyond Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. We haven't heard a whole lot about the region as a whole to this point in the discussion. Are we doing what we need to be? Is cooperation important, and how can we do it better?
Well, Bill, I think we are doing a lot better. You know, if you go back in not too long a time ago, we lost 250,000 steel-related jobs in the 80s. We spent a lot of time focused on that. Since that time, we've seen a lot of job growth in the region, but it was masked really by the losses of the steel-related jobs. And I think as we look forward into the 21st century, you're going to be seeing people live where they want to live, where they can maximize their quality of life. In a network society, we can do a lot of things from virtually any geographic location. If you think about Pittsburgh, which is today the safest city in the top 40, we have a cultural district that's arguably as good as any, terrific health care, good educational systems, and very low-cost housing. This is a wonderful place to live. And just recently, you know, with the digital greenhouse coming to town and a number of high-tech companies moving to Pittsburgh, I asked them why they would move to Pittsburgh, and they said just because the same reason that the steel guys moved at the turn of the century, raw material. And their raw material are the students coming out of the great universities in the region. So I think there's a great opportunity for us in the future.
Teresa Hines, you put a great deal of personal energy, among other things, into developing the region, helping the region reach its highest aspirations. We've talked a lot about the assets. What would you consider to be the biggest need at the moment to move it forward?
I think the biggest need is the development amongst all of Pittsburghers of a clear feeling that they can change. I think that the result of the steel meltdown created what I would think is depression. And everybody did become negative. And monies that were brought in from the outside were not able to, government monies, to really impact on a lot of situations. And this was something my late husband worried a lot about. In fact, we tried, and with Tim and others, how do we build grassroots development? And it goes back to what Ms. Rush said, which was, you know, everybody has to go to the table and at least know they're being heard. I think that's changing. I've seen that, for example, amongst the philanthropies here in town. There used to be one, you know, one did this, one did that, and now we all work together. One may have a, you know, a better idea about education, and the other one more about hospital funding or whatever, but we always share now, and I think it's really changing the climate. Now, the second point I think really needs to help to keep these kids here, and I have 3 sons, and one of them has worked here. He's now working in Europe. I would dearly love to have them all come back here, and I hope they don't see this program because they never will. But my one son, and he's here today from Europe for a meeting, said, "Mom, we've got to do something about life for young people." And he didn't mean by that marrieds with children. Young people. We need some fun. We need some cafes. We need some restaurants where you can have some food. We need, because I like to go to the music, etc. That doesn't exist here very much. And I'm not talking about expensive, just fun. And I think until we do that, until we have people sitting on the sidewalks having a cup of coffee the way they do in San Francisco and listening to music, etc., the town will be dead.
Well, Jim Parks, let's pick up on that point. The name of this segment, our closing segment, is Solutions for a City and a Region. You have the responsibility of being chairman of the Pittsburgh Regional Alliance. Is it a true alliance, or is there still a great deal of work to be done in the sense of unity?
Well, I think there's always work to be done in building this kind of precedent setting for this region, and I think for many other regions, kind of work of bringing the urban center together with the outlying regions and the outlying counties. But we're making tremendous progress. Let me throw out a word for you that we're trying to capture, what I think has been raised over and over again, this sort of fundamental transformation of our economy, of the way we look, the physical look of this region, and even the cultural and social networks that we're beginning to build. We're going to call it metromorphosis. And I think that it captures something that goes beyond the singular kinds of changes that might be represented in any one of those. But it goes also, I think, to the heart of moving from what I think defined this region for far too long, a culture of blame, and now moving to where can we take it? A spirit where we can move the velocity and the trajectory of job growth and of solution finding in a much, much more positive and constructive way.
Now, Bill Strickland, you've had a lot of experience in trying to, create job growth and pull people bootstraps up. What's the biggest need now? What solution should the region be searching for at the moment?
I think we've got to continue a tradition of community.
Tradition of?
Community. We've got to see ourselves as one big part of one big solution and not separate opportunities. And secondly, we can't wait for CBS News to come to town to do this. That you have encouraged us and demonstrated to us how a community ought to function. We ought to be able to do this in a way that says that we recognize that we're all parts of the problem, but also parts of the solution. If we do more of this process, we'll get more things to measure that we can touch, I believe.
All right. Now, Jim, I see here that you're the co-chair of the Working Together Consortium. First of all, what is it?
I don't think anybody knows.
Well, I'm very pleased. It's like this metromorphosizing that he was talking about.
It is. When you look at the Working Together Consortium, it's an organization that was put together 3-4 years ago to basically bring in a non-hostile, because we're so parochial in this region.
Are you really parochial? Is it really that parochial?
Oh, we'll fight over anything. You want to fight over? What do you want to fight over, Dan? We'll fight. And,
no, I'm a peacemaker.
And believe me, trust me. When you know we'll fight, they throw us a crumb, we fight over the crumb. While we fight over the crumb, the roads, the jobs, the money goes to other regions and other areas. This region built this country. This region built the steel to win 2 wars. We're owed something. And yet we had to fight ourselves. And Esther used a term that I like. Believe me, I'm the token regional guy here today. Right. I've heard nothing except Allegheny County and the city of Pittsburgh. And yet that's not what we're all about. And you can ask the mayor that. Mayor was in charge of Plan B, and Commissioner DeWita, who's out in the audience. We're in charge of Plan E in the region, and that's economic development. And we accomplished both our goals for this region. We are growing. We are maturing. So if I'm taking off on that. What was your question?
No, you answered the question very well. You answered the question very well. You know, you make an excellent point. I want to move to Jen in the audience, but you make an excellent question. I'm a child of World War II. Wasn't old enough to fight, but, you know, glued to the radio the whole time. Everybody knows the war was won, seen from one point of view, on a line running straight from Pittsburgh to Detroit. Made the steel, made the vehicles, made the ammunition. Now, this was the arsenal of democracy more than 50 years ago, when we had it all on the line. What's happened here? I want to look towards the solution, not toward the anatomy, but something's happened to the spirit, the soul of the place.
Well, we're getting better at that. The last time this region in all 9 counties worked together was the French and Indian War, just so you know that. And we're doing it again, because we're telling people, as the mayor alluded to the negative people, we're telling them, get out of our way. If you didn't notice, we're building a crazy intersection at Etna. We're finally doing it after 30-some years. We're going to fix that problem. We're taking care of our transportation needs. We're taking care of what we need to do as a region. People don't care about what county they live in. They go to work in whatever county they have a job in. And they cross those county lines. They don't care about that anymore. Why should we? But we're not elected regionally, nor do we want to be. We're elected by our counties. We sit together more than people think, and we work together. And we've managed to really, in 2 years, turn around our thinking, which we're supposed to be the leaders. So now it's time to lead.
I'm going to turn to the audience. Jen, you have someone who wants to address this point.
Dan, I do have the mayor who I'm sure would like to react to some of the comments by the panelists, but if we are talking about bettering the region, we do need to speak with somebody from Allegheny County, and we have Commissioner Mike DeWita with us.
Well, Jen, it's real simple. We have 2 years ago begun to do something that was never done, and Jim Scahill alluded to it. We began to work together, city, county, other counties, regions. And what it has produced is $8 billion of development, 50,000 new jobs, and a new spirit. And I'll give you one solution, a very specific solution. In Homestead, you heard George DeBolt talk about it. It was the arsenal of democracy. We now have the largest steel tube producer in the world that came, or in America, is now operating there. It came from Italy. And we have $100 million of development with 5,000 new jobs created because the 3 communities that made up that area did a tax sharing plan. First time there was this kind of cooperative effort in the history of our region. It makes a difference, and we must continue to do this kind of cooperation, or we'll fall back into the old bickering and the old ways. As he said, since the French and Indian War, we never worked together. We are now, because the new capital of today is intellectual, and we're using what we have.
Well, even I was not around for the French and Indian War. Mayor, what about Jim Scahill? He says, listen, he's heard a lot of talk about Pittsburgh and Allegheny County, but he's not hearing anything about out there where his interests lie.
Well, I think Jim Scahill is a great example of what has happened in the last 2 years in this region. We had a terrible community fight, and we had a referendum that lost, and in Jim Scahill's neighborhood, it probably lost by about 80%, about having a half-a-cent sales tax and raising a lot of money to do stadiums, plus a lot of other economic development stuff. To Mike DeWita and Bob Cramner's credit, the 3 of us stepped forward and said, we'll build the ballparks, but Jim, you need to show the leadership, somebody in the other 9 counties to step forward, put us together, and move the rest of the regional agenda forward. He did that, and the results are literally all over Western Pennsylvania now. You see new industrial parks, Slate Lick Industrial Park up in Armstrong County, and in Butler and Washington County. So what you're seeing is a work in progress, a jigsaw puzzle that the pieces were scattered all over the table. And one by one, Jim Scahill and Jim Rohr and Art Rooney and Rich Sinizzo and Bill Strickland and Mike DeWita, we're all putting them together.
Jim Scahill, what is he not telling me?
One of the things we have to do and have to remember is we can't look to Portland or Seattle or to North Carolina's Triangle, because we are unique. There's nobody like the Pittsburghers, and we're all Pittsburghers. And we have to do it our way, and we have to build our unity of our 9 counties as a unique experience. To do that, we have to work together. We have to put away all our little hurts and all our little pains of all our centuries of trouble and neglect and who did what to who. And that's what we're all about. We're saying get out of the way. You don't like to build the roads? Move. We're going to build the roads. And we're going to build the jobs for our kids, period.
We have only a few minutes left. If someone in the audience who's not been addressed think they have a solution, raise your hand. Let me see if I can, in the few seconds we have, get to you. Okay? Right. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Jackie Hill, and I'm second representative of Pittsburgh Community Reinvestment Group. Access to capital. The banks have been very forthright in coming forward, helping us with affordable housing. The same conditions do not exist for small business lending in many of the low-income and minority communities. If everyone has access to capital, we are all at least an equal starting point. That, to me, is a fundamental solution.
Jim Rohrer, is it true or untrue that it's much more difficult today for someone who has a good idea about a business to walk into the bank and say, I got a good idea, we'll listen to it, and if you like it, loan me the money?
Oh, I think it's easier today than it was, Dan. We have a whole series of areas in the bank. We have the PNC Venture Bank, for example, which is the largest market share of investing in startup communities and lending to startup companies all the way from Virginia through Pittsburgh. And frankly, we have over $500 million invested in venture capital ourselves, and we work together with the foundations and a number of other venture capital companies that have brought literally billions of dollars to Pittsburgh in the last few years. This wasn't true, again, 10 years ago, but it's true today as people work together in teamwork and partnership. And Bill Strickland's been one of those people to work with all of us, and we've come a long way from where we were when we were losing those jobs in the 80s to the point where we're now growing the city rapidly and the region rapidly into the future.
Well, in the spirit of coming together, maybe we can send Miss Jackie Hill by to see you. Thanks. We'll be back in a moment for some final thoughts.
At McDonald's, we put a little extra zest into seasoning the burger. We go the extra mile with thick sliced tomato and fresh whole leaf lettuce. We take extra care chopping the fresh onions. We even put some extra thought into where to put the ketchup and mayo. Why? Because it takes a lot of little extras to make a big extra. Presenting the extraordinarily tasty Big Extra. Where? Did somebody say McDonald's?
Some of the names that wrote the history of Pittsburgh medicine have come together to rewrite its future. So you'll still have a great choice for great health care. Introducing the new West Penn Allegheny Health System. World-class health care in your hometown.
Seen any nice furniture lately? Value City Furniture. You just can't do any better.
The next 50 years on KDKA TV is brought to you by McDonald's. Hurry into McDonald's and try the new Big Extra sandwich made hot, fresh, and just for you. Did somebody say McDonald's? And by the West Penn Allegheny Health System.
No one can plan a half century ahead. All people can do is make the best decisions they can in the present to lay the groundwork for prosperity. Pittsburgh is not alone in facing the transition from industrial center to player in the new information age economy. Where it may have an edge is in having brought the central issues to the table. The folks in this room and those of you watching at home know what's at stake, and I hope we'll continue to debate what's needed to keep Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania competitive for our children and grandchildren in the next 50 years and beyond.
We have tremendous capabilities here in southwestern Pennsylvania, Dan. Our challenge here is to find a way to leverage them to compete successfully against other regions around the world in this century to come. Stacy and Jen?
Thanks, Bill. Dan, thanks to our panelists. Thanks to members of the audience today. Obviously, there is much to think about and talk about in the weeks and months ahead.
And as KDKA TV celebrates its 50th anniversary, it is proud to have been a major player, a major part in this region's last 50 years. And we hope to be a major resource for all of our hometowns in the century to come. For Jennifer, Patrice, and Ken, I'm Stacy Smith. Good night.
Ken Rice and Patrice King Brown, weeknights on KDKA TV.